Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good day, Sir Shafiq. I am Wahidah Kamilah binti Razalli, metric number 050137. We'll now presenting the Act of Parliament that gazetted as the Vaccination Act 2020. So in this Vaccination Act 2020, it contained 7 parts altogether, whereby I will present this act part by part and not section by section. So before I move on to the first point, let me recite the verse 195 from Surah Al-Baqarah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وأنفقوا في سبيل الله ولا تلقوا بأيديكم إلى التهلكة وأحسنوا إن الله يحب المحسنين, which means that spend in the cause of Allah and do not let your own hands throw you into destruction by withholding, and do good, for Allah certainly loves the good doers. So the relation of this verse with this act is that this act is the preventative measures taken for the immunization so that the greater harm can be avoided. All right, so moving to the first point, whereby vaccination is not specified to the contagious diseases only as COVID-19, but to give immunization to our body so that it can fight for the dangerous virus such as cervical cancer, we have HPV shot and many more. Thus, the purpose why this act is enacted, which can be seen here, whereas it is desired to introduce in the form of an act parliament with respect to the vaccination. Second, whereas it is important to acknowledge the significance of vaccination to the people as to protect themselves at earlier stage from the diseases, whether it is contagious or not. And whereas it is for the benefits of all the citizens of Malaysia and those who have the permanent resident status to take vaccine accordingly with the prescription from the Ministry of Health in Malaysia, and it is pursuant to Article 74, Clause 1 of the Federal Constitution, which construed that Parliament may make law regarding the health on the item 14, first list, 9 schedule. So with regard to the application in the jurisprudence matter, first I start with the Islamic jurisprudence here, whereby there are 3 methods altogether in making this act. First, maslahah mursalah, saddu zara'i, and also istihsan. The reason why is that this act has preventative measure, as told before, that clearly can be seen in the purpose to protect the people. So this act can also bring the good rather than bad, as to impose the law on the vaccination part. So it may seem as to push the people to accept the vaccination through enforcement, but in the same time, it is to protect the maqasid sharia, which is the life of the people. So whereby in the application of the jurisprudence of Western jurisprudence, so this may be seen on the historical school and also legal positivism school. It is because before this act was enacted, we go back to the history on the pandemic that happened before, which we have Ebola virus, H1N1 virus, MERS virus, and we came to the conclusion that we need to have an enforcement which to comply the people to be vaccinated so that we can prevent this from early stage. So as what we can see now, the outbreak of COVID-19, and this is the law that the society needed the most right now. So for the next part is the preliminary part here, which contain 3 sections. First, short title. Second, application and commencements. And third is the interpretation. So here, the theory of law by Jeremy Bentham can be applied, whereby it promoted on codification of the law, whereas unwritten law will be vague and uncertain. Thus, here the interpretation of some wording in section 3 follow the rule of Jeremy Bentham. Here we can see such as child, contagious disease, the meaning of endemic, epidemic, guardian, and also pandemic and other. So for the second part here, which is under the heading of Malaysian Vaccination Council, here the theory of law used by John Austin, where he was the legal positivism, and he said that law is a rule laid down for the guidance of the intelligent being by an intelligent being having power over him. So rules is enacted by the sovereign and serve as a guidance. There are 3 elements of law laid down by the school, that is the command, duty, and also sanction. So we can see in this part that the power confers in the Minister of Health under section 7 is to give the general direction for the purpose of the vaccination to the council, and also the council shall have shall be the organization that have the say for the vaccination in Malaysia, as stated under the Section 5, which is duty and powers of the Council. So whereas for the Part 3, which is vaccination premises, contain two sections. First, division of vaccination area, and secondly, premises for vaccination. So this can be related to sociological school, where this school believes that the law must be made by state in the interest of the general welfare. So it is to protect the interests of the society and the individuals by coordinating those interests to minimize the possibility of social contract. So this is to ensure fair distribution of social benefits and burden among the community. So we can see that we have the division of vaccination area for the people, so that the people can get the vaccine accordingly at their state, at their place. And then the next part is Part 4, which is the vaccinators. We have appointment of vaccinators, the section for private vaccinators, and then section 12 for no fee to be charged except by a private vaccinators, and lastly, section 13, inspection before vaccination. So here, the Western juris applied here is the legal positivism, whereby the objective, this school laid down the objective of law is to increase the total happiness. So we can see here as such as section 12, no fee to be charged except by a private vaccinator, so that the people can get the vaccination free without having to give their money, without having to pay the vaccination. So now for the Part 5, its heading is vaccination because it's focusing more on the procedure itself, on the vaccination of the people. So this section contains 6 sections altogether, which can be seen here. Section 14, the effect of commencement of the Act. Section 15, vaccination for child. Section 16, unprotected child from vaccination. Section 17, punishment for the failure to have the child to be vaccinated. Section 18, person being exempted from vaccination, and Section 19, post-effect of the vaccination. So as for the Western jurisprudence, we use the sociological school here. Why? Because to make this section, we need to make surveys, statistical analysis to observe the data on how affected the children and the people that did not get the vaccine to achieve to this conclusion in dynamic and towards the development of the society itself. And then we moving on to the Part 6 in this act, whereby the heading is certificate of vaccination. So we have Section 20, procedure for being exempted from vaccination. Section 21, crime of forgery of certificate. Section 22, penalty of forgery of certificate. Section 23, liability of the Director of State Health in forgery of certificate. And again, the theory of law by John Austin will be applied here, where there is sanction in this part. There is sanction in this part. The law is, as mentioned before, the theory is that the law is command, duty, and also sanction. And clearly under this part is focusing on the sanction part, where it mentioned on the crime of forgery. Here we can see the liability of the Director of State of Health, and also the penalty of forgery certificate. And then the last part is the heading is occurrence of endemic, epidemic, and also pandemic. So this part, the theory of Jeremy Bentham from legal positivism school shall be applied, where the law is concerned on with the theory of pain and pleasure. Why? Because under this part, the section prevent people from going from one place to another without the vaccination is the pain part, and the pleasure to the society as a whole when they are in the safe circle under the immunization. All right, but before I conclude this presentation, I didn't mention the Islamic jurisprudence before. Why? Because for Islamic jurisprudence, it is actually applied in the whole act and not part by part per se, because the maxim of la darar wa la dirar, where the harm is neither inflicted nor tolerated in Islam, shows that the prevention should be taken to avoid greater harm, as what we can see happening now in Malaysia today due to COVID-19. The cases keep arising from day to day. So as for the other method, it is the same as the beginning of the presentation, which I mentioned before, the maslahah, sadu zara'i, and also istihsan. This is because this act is to the benefit of the children and all people as a whole. And the important part to highlight is that this act is the preventative measure that should be applied upon the people. So that concludes my presentation on this act with the method of defining the law. Thank you and Assalamualaikum.